It's #1 on the list of local talkers in town. The deal to keep the Jaguars and improve the stadium. What went into bringing the deal together? And what are the details being sifted by City Council ahead of Tuesday's anticipated vote? Two experts with decades of experience in municipal government on This Week in Jacksonville.
Yeah, thank you for being with us today. So in this part of our episode, the Stadium of the Future, as the Jaguars call it, that's our focus. Jacksonville owns the stadium, the biggest tenant, of course, the local NFL team, and it's time to catch up with the rest of the league with comprehensive renovations and improvements at the stadium. So with us today, Rick Mullaney, the founder of Jacksonville University's Public Policy Institute. Rick worked for 20 years, 3 administrations as legal counsel and chief of staff here in Jacksonville. Mike Weinstein, a former state representative who served as chief financial officer in multiple administrations in City Hall. Most recently, Mike's been the lead negotiator on this project for Mayor Donna Deegan's office. So let's start here. It seems like this deal came together almost as planned, and maybe with terms that are better than some people expected for the city of Jacksonville.
Well, the process worked very, very well. We started now 10, 11 months ago as soon as Mayor Deegan came in. And the Jaguars, from the beginning, wanted to be here. They had options, but they wanted to be here. We wanted them to stay. And we both felt very important that whatever the final product was would be very fair and appear to be fair, perceived to be fair by the community. They had a vested interest in making it fair also. It's their fans, it's their base. So it was a very, very good process to get us to where we are today, and I think it is a fair deal and much better than the lease that we're under now.
Yeah, and so as we have our conversation here, I invited Rick to be with us because, Rick, you've been on the other side of the table, not asking the questions, but you've been in negotiations, not these specifically. What's your view, and what questions would you have for Mike this morning?
Well, Mike, we could look back 30 years when you helped put the original deal together. You take a look at this one, it's come a long way, but this is really the largest public-private partnership in the history of Jacksonville at $1.4 billion.
It is the largest project that we've ever undertaken.
And $775 million of that from the city of Jacksonville when you combine the $625 plus the $150 up front. So how do we go about funding that? And as you've been fond of saying, we make choices, policy choices with our funds. How do we fund that, and what potential impact on other choices that we may have?
Well, as you know, even in a family budget, it's all about priorities and what have you. And this administration felt it was very important to keep the Jaguars here and do what we could. There'll be no projects that aren't undertaken because of the stadium. It'll be done by debt, just like a mortgage. Basically, we'll pay it off over the years to come. It's not going to be done until 28, so it's still pretty far in advance in years. But basically, we have the capacity to go out and continue to borrow to a certain extent. Has no impact, again, on any projects that we're trying to do, or no impact on projects we've already agreed to do. It'll just be enlarging our debt over the long term, and it's just basically us moving from a starter house to a bigger house with a bigger mortgage, but our operating budget gets bigger and bigger every year as well, so we can afford the debt service on a bigger project.
Well, one of the things that stood out to me in this agreement is that, and we're seeing this with the school district right now, so you can have a plan, you can have a budget, and then the costs go up. This is interesting to me. Maybe explain some of that, because I understand construction cost, if there's overruns or if it costs more, the Jaguars are going to take care of that.
We're very fortunate. Right from the beginning, the Jaguars had agreed to cover cost overruns, and all the other NFL projects of late all had overruns. And the Jaguars did Miller Electric, they did Daly's Place, they did the Flex Field. All of them had overruns. But they basically said from the beginning, we'll cover the cost overruns. Give us the responsibility of building it, maintaining it, and we'll cover the overruns. And that was a big piece of the puzzle. And that's why when you look at a negotiation like this, you can't just look at one piece. You know, a council member or a citizen may say, well, we shouldn't have done this or we shouldn't have done that. But it's tied to 100 other elements of the deal. And we gave up a thing or two possibly during the process to make sure they covered the overruns. So our exposure is absolutely capped no matter what happens. Plus, we split if it comes in under budget. We split it 50-50, basically, if it comes in under budget. So we got a pretty good deal as it relates to the full package.
Well, you know, Michael, certainly one of the hopes of this deal is to ensure the Jaguars are here for the next 30 years. And in putting the deal together, as Ed Austin used to say, the time to make the plans in case the unthinkable becomes thinkable is to provide for it in the agreement then. 30 years ago, we provide for that. Now the What does the relocation agreement say here in the event of the Jaguars wanting to leave? And I'm certainly not suggesting that, but when the relationship is good, you put that in the agreement. What are the terms of the agreement as far as the relocation piece and helping ensure that they're going to be here for the next 3 decades?
Well, they were committed for the 30 years. They're putting in a lot of funds, but basically the liquidated damages, if in fact they left, if they left during the first 15 years, they would owe us everything that we put in, plus the interest on everything we put in, back as a payment if they left, and we'd be not stuck, we'd have a fabulous stadium and basically at no cost to us. But that's not going to happen. We really don't think so. And they agreed to very substantial damages if they left. So we're very, very confident that we got a 30-year deal, and they're basically going to build the building in a useful life 30-year structure.
Certainly one of the terms that seems much more favorable, because this is always a cost, was operating costs for game day expenses. How about talking about that a little bit for the operational costs on game day?
Well, the game day expenses currently is a little over $7 million a season that we front totally. We pay all $7 million plus each and every year. In the new lease, the only thing we're going to pay for is JSO, fire, security. It's going to come to about $1.5 million instead of over $7 million. They're going to cover all the other game day expenses throughout the season. So we pick up $5.5 million just on that piece alone.
A year.
A year. Plus they're going to contribute to other things in keeping it operating, keeping the capital coming as far as making sure it's a useful life. And they don't do that now. Right now, it's totally on us. In the future, it's going to be a shared expense. So the deal's much better than the one we have currently. So we're pleased.
And Mike, one of the things, Rick referenced this earlier, you talked about it briefly, but largest public-private partnership in city history. Why is that important to consider, and what kind of ramifications are there for other projects beyond the stadium?
Well, the whole idea is that particular area of the city should become an economic engine for all the other areas of the city. We're going to look at an entertainment district. We're going to look at, already Shad Khan has the highest private investment in downtown with Four Seasons. He's already invested over $400 million building the hotel basically across from the stadium. This will put him over $1 billion of investment in that area of downtown. So if we don't make that an economic engine, we've really fell short of what it could be. So, and if that's an economic engine, it not only helps downtown, but it provides resources that could be spread throughout the county.
Yeah, so one of the things we want to talk about, and we're not going to get to it right now, the CBA, the Community Benefits Agreement. There are other elements of this, but I thank you for being here on our show this morning. And there's even more to talk about on this topic. We did it on the latest episode of This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. So beyond the stadium deal, we're talking about how does this intersect with other city priorities, challenges. Mike Weinstein, Rick Mullaney, they're the guests on the podcast. A new podcast drop every Thursday at 9 a.m. You can find it right now. It's available right now, News4Jax Plus, under the channel This Week in Jacksonville. All right, stay with us, and when we come back, the city's chief health officer, that is Dr. Sunil Joshi. So stay with us on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
Mayor Donna Deegan is a 3-time cancer survivor and campaigned promising to make health a priority in Jacksonville. She appointed Dr. Sunil Joshi as chief health officer about a year ago. Dr. Joshi is joining us now. So, Dr. Joshi, your office has tackled a lot in these 11 months. What are some of the highlights of what you've been approaching?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just from the get-go, we were dealing with extreme heat back in August of last year, and we started working on cooling centers that were in particular open to our most vulnerable population, both from a heat standpoint, but also from a social vulnerability standpoint. We went through our Get Covered Jax campaign and were able to add another 24,000 people onto the health insurance platform here through Marketplace Insurance. And then our mental health awareness campaign, Mental Health Matters Jax. We're all quick awareness campaigns that got people out there talking about things that can impact their health and had more immediate impacts.
Yeah, and Dr. Joshi, you presented to City Council recently. I appreciate that. One of the items that caught my eye here, Duval County's rank in health comes below average. Why? What are some of the challenges there?
Yeah, and so we look compared to our peers in the state, the rest of the state, we rank in the lower quartile. And there are plenty of factors for that, but most of those have to do with what we call the social determinants of health. And so it's hard to believe, but the interaction that you have with your primary care provider or your doctor or healthcare provider in the office only makes up about 20% of all health outcomes. The rest of that is made up with social economic factors, whether or not you have a job, your employment status, your income level, your education, your transportation, the air quality, the water quality. All of those things also impact health. And we have 840 square miles of people who are completely diverse, not only in their ethnicity and their background, but also in their living conditions. And those do make a big difference in terms of your health outcomes.
Well, as we started working on, hey, what do we want to discuss in depth in this segment? So the city approved $5.6 million for health programs, and I want to show you some of what is on there. So to decrease infant mortality, mental health resources, to reduce elderly food insecurity, to train community health workers, and to support Duval County's the Safety Net Primary Care Program. So $5.5 million.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that goes into trying to help people understand what's available to them.
Yeah, and I think it's important as we talk about health outcomes, and you were mentioning that earlier, one of the ways that they determine that is by looking at premature death rate. And so when people are dying before the age of 75, if you die at the age of 74, that's 1 year of life lost. If you die at the age of 1, that's 75 years of life lost. So if you look at health outcomes, if we can turn around our infant mortality numbers, we can significantly improve our health outcomes here in Northeast Florida because we would be decreasing the years of life lost. And so our infant mortality in Jacksonville has always ranked way above the state average, but in the last 5 years, we have seen that decrease. It's decreased by 25%. There are things that are working here in Duval County, and in particular, it's community health workers, people who are out there on the street talking to moms and dads who have recently become pregnant or right after pregnancy and delivery to impact the ability to take care of their babies so that they can sleep better, have better sleep habits, not overcrowd them in bed, not suffocate in bed. All these little things that happen when there's a housing issue that we're dealing with here in Northeast Florida.
Yeah, and I appreciate hearing some of those. Hey, there are these socioeconomic factors that also play into all these different health outcomes. We wanted to talk about the importance for people who are uninsured.
Yeah.
So often using the emergency departments as a source of primary care. I mean, it's what's your feeling on this, and how do we maybe change that trajectory?
Yeah, and so that's one of the big issues here in Jacksonville. Right? We have uncompensated care in the emergency room costs about $4,200 a person, and the taxpayers pay that. We paid $42 million of city dollars for uncompensated care to our not-for-profit hospitals in the last year. And so that's bad for multiple reasons. Number one, people are going there not getting paid and the taxpayers are covering it. But number two, these folks who don't have health insurance in a lot of cases are using the emergency room as their primary care. And really, the emergency room is not set up that way. They're set up to take care of the emergency, treat it, and get people out. Whereas if you get into a primary care system, you're getting preventative care. And so we're setting up a program that we'll be introducing shortly, where we are going to introduce a telehealth program in our uninsured community, where they would call a certain number if they felt like they needed to go to the emergency room, talk to a doctor right there on the phone or through a web encounter, and determine whether or not they really need to go to the ER. Can they be treated right there on the phone for their sinus infection or bronchitis or stubbed toe, keep them out of the emergency room, and then set them up into a primary care network through Jax Care Connect, which connects over 7 or 8 not-for-profit Duval Safety Net clinics together so people can get primary preventative care and stay out of the emergency room at the same time.
It sounds like win-win, because could get better primary care and ends up saving millions of dollars for taxpayers.
If you think about, if we're able to treat 10,000 people that way, and if 50% of them would have gone to the emergency room, and you're talking about each emergency room visit costs about $4,200 of uncompensated care, we'd save the taxpayers $20 million right then and there. So these are not only ways for us to help keep our community healthy, but also save taxpayer dollars.
So before we wrap up, and we've got another minute left, but I know we want to talk about elderly food insecurity, the plan to address that, to try and help
believe it or not, we talk about food insecurity a lot in Northeast Florida. We don't spend a lot of time talking about our elderly population who may be food insecure for reasons that don't have anything to do with income. It may also have to do with disability, inability to drive because of their vision and not unable to hear, things like that. And so there are over 3,000 people on a waiting list for getting a hot meal a day through our Reels on Meals program. And so we have a program to feed an additional 2,000 of those people, not just with ordinary food, but food that is approved by the Older Americans Act and can be kosher, can be vegetarian, can be vegan, can be Hindu vegetarian, food that people are actually excited about eating instead of just a standard salad. And so we're excited to roll that program out as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it could really make a difference for that population.
Oh, absolutely. And so again, these are folks who can't get to a grocery store, don't know how to use an app to get Instacart or things like that, but need to be fed. And so not only do you feed them, you also have somebody who then checks in on them as well to make sure that they're doing well inside of their home.
Yeah. Dr. Joshi, I know you've got a passion for this. As we've gotten to know each other over the years, certainly this role for you, I know, is probably invigorating and something that we want to keep in touch with you about. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. I look forward to doing it again.
All right, thank you. So there's a gender gap in American politics. Why do Democrat women make up the majority of females in political office? Our next guest takes up the topic with me on This Week in Jacksonville. Don't go anywhere.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
Thanks for staying with us today. Teresa Lusk is our guest in this segment, host of The Teresa Lusk Show. And as we were talking and getting ready for our segment here, really the topic is about the disparity, the gender gap, if you will, in American politics. People who are in political office, more men than women, that doesn't surprise us, but there are some changes. What are you observing right now?
Well, the changes are, which is good news, that women are starting to get more involved in politics, which is great. However, we are starting to see where there are more Democrat women running than Republican women. So it's something to definitely pay attention to and say, what's going on here? What's the disparity about? It's exciting that women are running, more women, but the question is why? What's going on?
So not some parity there, and thanks for your research, but I brought some information to share with you. So in 2023, women made up almost 28% of the U.S. Congress, highest share ever recorded. I think that's your point, Teresa, that's good. Democrat women significantly outnumbering Republican women in Congress and in the state legislatures, though. Again, back to 2023, 124 women in the House of Representatives, 91 Democrats, 33 Republicans. What do you take out of that about some of the reasons why?
Sure. Few reasons. First of all, I believe that it has to do with recruiting. So what are we doing to recruit the more conservative side of women that usually they are more concerned about taking care of their households? You know, usually conservative women, they have more traditional roles. They're thinking about raising a family, being there for the children, being there for the husband. So when it comes to recruiting, it's a little hard to pull a woman out and say, can you run for office when you're busy?
Because you got those other duties. Yeah,
right.
You got those other things. One of the things I knew we wanted to talk about some of the barriers and challenges to this, and I think that lines up with what you're talking about right there, right?
Oh, absolutely. In addition to that, we have that some women are really afraid of competition. They don't like the idea of being in a competitive environment. Usually, again, going back to the conservative women, they just have a tendency to want to kind of sit back a little bit, where Democrat women tend to focus a lot more on equality of roles. So they're going to go get that, you know, in the career, and they're going to focus on that. Where and it sounds like it's almost like, you know, saying, well, you know, is this really true? There's research out there that conservative women do want to be a little more behind the scenes. And so while it's exciting, we should ask, hey, how can we get these conservative women to be a part of this exciting season?
Yeah, there has been significant progress. We just showed some of the numbers here, but we know a milestone like Kamala Harris being the first female vice president. Certainly, there's a higher likelihood of women saying, well, maybe I do want to pursue that. I saw she did it.
That's right. I think that's what's so exciting about having seen her run and actually make it, that there's representation there. I think when a lot of people can see the evidence of representation, it might stir up some things and make you go, hey, maybe I should consider this. You know, I think it's great news when a woman rolls out of bed and says, I think I'm going to run for office today. you know, and so I think she really inspired a lot of women. Again, she did inspire a lot more Democrat women than Republican women, but she's inspiring women to get up there and be a part of this.
What's the future outlook? Before we run out of time, there may be some policy solutions as well for her.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the solution is to start educating women in general. Start educating them, you know, just like we put funds to the side and say, hey, you know, we can actually, you know, create awareness. If we create awareness that women are empowered, they are able, they are capable, they're skilled, they're multitaskers. If we begin to provide that, you know, that platform for them, I think more of them will say, hey, I think I could do this. Also, tapping into the things that are important to women. I think that we've really got to say, hey, is education important to you? Then guess what? You are very much equipped to take this on, to be a voice, be one who can shape the future of our nation, the future of your state, et cetera. So I think as we really pay attention to what am I passionate about and how can I make a difference, there's a reason why a woman should get up and say, maybe I should consider this.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and obviously we're seeing some changes, but want women to know it's not just acceptable to be, it's desirable. We want you involved. Teresa Lusk, I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
I know you just came into town, and I'm like scooping you up. Let's talk about this, but appreciate your insights today.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.
All right, well, there's a presidential debate ahead this week. We're going to break down the impact with our panel of experts next time we get together. Thanks for watching on air and on Channel 4 and on the CW17. And you always find us online at news4jax.com or streaming on News4Jax Plus.
See why every day more people are choosing News 4 Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.